Out of the rain.
Now, where in the world do you suppose that...
Lose something?
Oh! Well, I was... No, I mean, I was just wondering...
Oh, that's quite all right. One moment, please. Ooh.
So when you look at this, there would be the divine right of kings. And we have this blessing from Almighty God. But there also comes into play this thing about natural law and the natural sequence of things, which often lead to war. You can see in the Ukraine with NATO and Poland at the moment. There is a replay of what happened some time ago playing out in front of you as they try and screw the thumb down a little bit further and advance on their plans that they had almost 100 years ago. It's in those plans that led them to Nuremberg offences, that led them to a Rule 92 in this international humanitarian landscape. So this natural law has a big feature in what would be considered the divine right of a peoples rather than a divine right of kings, because it takes a people to be a kingdom, and it will be one of you that lead it, so to speak. And it's in that knowledge of faith, law, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you're going to discover what this blessing of Almighty God actually is. When you comprehend that it's a physical creation that is then defended, you'll begin to comprehend how administration can take place over the top of what would be considered the de jure versus what would clearly be a de facto doctrine and what we see as a clear field doctrine at play. There are a lot of agreements on the table between nations around the world that are being put under a lot of pressure because of the realm in which they participate. It's in a realm that you find these foundations in faith that were laid down by forefathers in the practicality. There's a reality in what is spiritual, in a belief to defend what it actually is. And when you start to unravel this blessing, you start to realize that you've been given a set of instructions at which to follow and then hold in relation to what would be considered your country on international waters, wherein then you would take part in international treaties, conventions, pacts, armistices, and so on. These sovereign abilities were born from somewhere to be able to be founded and anchored to holy ground. So it's in understanding this blessing and this reliance upon it, because the preamble to the Constitution clearly says relying on the blessing from Almighty God under a kingdom, under the Constitution hereby established, Clause 9 of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, July 1900, UK/PGA. Having this estate put under administration is clearly demonstrated by usury and this de facto doctrine, and the actions of this government are clearly defined by this Clearfield doctrine. And the trail of evidence in the legislation and the actions of this Parliament within a landscape wherein a curial aspect has changed in time, wherein many of you have realised that these people sought to undermine you and take the very land from underneath your feet. And this can be demonstrated right now with the UK turning this digital ID into a right to work and a right to rent. Because you'll own nothing, remember, and it'll be enforced by you, the military, that will fight for someone else who will own it all, instead of you, the men of the land, defending the very land you live on. So these masters, with all their wealth, have attempted to privatize the world over the last 70 years and con it out of the naked owners or true land title holders, and attempt to digitize all of that into a world that is not real. There is no physical evidence once the electricity is turned off. You hold no deed of title. You have become pauper to your own land, even though as a bank loan payer, you've paid your loans off. Did you ever give back everything to the bank and remove its power of attorney over your affairs and claim your deed and title from this lender? Jesus kicked the money lender out of the temple, remember? Did you kick the money lender out of your title? Or do they still hold it in some way, shape, or form as a mortgage to something else, a borrower's title? So you've remortgaged your land title to have the benefits of this debt system. This goes for every police officer. This goes for every soldier. This goes for every child. This goes for every woman. And when they say a right to rent, they will only let the slaves of their slave farm use the facilities that they proclaim to own in a privatization of what could be considered gods and the naked owners of the garden. And in that we were told to render unto Caesar all that was Caesar's, and render unto God all that was God's. And in that respect, understand that a moneylender is in the temple, and therefore ask it to leave. This puts you in a Gandhi situation rather than a war situation. And it is in a majority of the people that you will get a greater benefit when these people plan to put you into digital ID slavery, wherein once that electricity disappears, there's no evidence of you owning anything. There is no paperwork to demonstrate title. There are no deeds held in estate. You're all paupers being treated as wards of the state, using these RBA currencies in a continual debt cycle where these militarized entities will pay their soldiers to come and undermine the very land that those soldiers' families live on. That goes for the police too. You all own homes in this banking system, and you too don't comprehend what deed of title actually means, what a state actually is. It is demonstrated by this curial evidence that's been put on Supreme Court of New South Wales in total ignorance of officers that have attempted to undermine the very peace itself at which they were obligated to peacekeep in. And that becomes a very serious issue when your country doesn't understand the rules that are on the table. And the agents of the government are basically down to what we would describe as almost as if you are being given a show that all is scripted before you see it, so that you don't comprehend where the script is taking you. And when a justice points out this very curial aspect, then there is something to be said within the preamble to the Constitution Act, wherein at Clause 9, the Constitution can be found. And it could therefore be said that without Act, Constitution could not exist. And it could also therefore be said that other clauses, which include the colonial boundaries repeal, are to be taken as valid, considering that they have already been scrutinised within the High Court. This makes the document of the Constitution Act a very valid document, which includes preamble and line of authority under this reliance of a blessing of Almighty God. So it's kind of important that you would discover what this blessing actually is, on which this Constitution relies upon. And if it relies upon it, it could then be said, without it, the Constitution could not, therefore, be in effect.
Chorus. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did a gyre and a gimble in the wave.
Why, you're a cat.
A Cheshire cat, all a mimsy, o'er the border goes.
Oh, wait. Don't go, please.
Very well. Third chorus.
Oh, no. Thank you, but I just wanted to ask you which way I ought to go.
Well, that depends on where you want to get to.
Oh, it really doesn't matter. As long as I can...
Then it really doesn't matter which way you go.